as I jump around in these videos, the number 6 draft pick. And I'm doing number 6 because there was a number 6 draft choice that somebody expected to see in the number 2 draft choice video. Anyways, let's do this. So, this is the top 15 all-time number 6 overall draft picks in the NHL entry draft. You have to have been picked number 6 in order to qualify. Number 15. Hampus Lindholm. He likely moves up the chart. I'd say Hampus could move up the chart with a good year this year. But for right now, I'm perfectly happy with him being 15th. Solid top 4 defenseman. Good guy for the Ducks. One of those players in Anaheim that I like quite a bit. Has contributed to my softening stance against the Ducks. Number 14. Walt McKechnie, who was drafted by Toronto in 1963. Solid career. Most of it preceded me watching hockey, but he had a long enough career, put up enough stats, that he has to be on this top 15. Number 13. That's one of my favorite players. Craig Hartsburg, Minnesota, 1979. You want to look up careers that I don't think lasted long enough. Hartsburg's on the list. At the time that I started watching Minnesota, Hartsburg was a very solid defenseman. He was one of my favorites. I want to say that him and Paul Reinhart were probably my favorites. Kevin Lowe would have been up there at the time, and Charlie Huddy as well. But yeah, Hartsburg, kind of a fantastic, of course, Ray Borg. But Hartsburg, absolutely. Number 12. Scottie Hartnell. Nashville, year 2000. Some all-star seasons for Scottie Hartnell. Now, what always comes to mind to me with Scottie Hartnell now is Hartnell down. The tracker when he was in Philly of how many times he fell down on the ice. Sadly, it looks like his career's come to an end, but you just never know. Somebody might give him a tryout. Maybe he'll get that shot. I know he's lost a step, but he's such a good character, such a good guy that I'd like to see him get another shot. Number 11. If you want to talk about players who kind of get forgotten, it's Corey Stillman of the Calgary Flames in 1992. Stillman had a very long career, went on for quite a while, and he seemed to get better as he got older. And I remember when he was playing in Carolina, he played some of the best hockey of his career, and yet it seemed like every year he was on retirement watch. People are like, oh, well, Stillman's going to go, and it's like Stillman was nowhere near ready to go. Solid player. I appreciated his game a lot. He's number 11 on the countdown. Number 10. While we're talking about Calgary, Sean Monahan comes in at number 10. Drafted in 2013, and I think his career's been solid enough to this point that I can put him at 10, and agree that it'll go higher. There will be a time where he's higher up on this list now. How high up he gets, he's not going to end up in the 1-2 spot, but honestly, I don't know if I'd qualify him as underrated or not. I know that Monahan is talked about a lot amongst Calgary faithful, and he's basically unmovable. Him and Gaudreau are the core up front, and there's no way those guys get traded. I say that, and then it'll happen like a year from now. Number 9. Mikko Koivu was drafted 1 year after Scottie Hartnell by the Minnesota Wild. And Mikko Koivu seems to defy his age. He seems to get better as he gets older. And if you're a Minnesota fan, Koivu's probably one of your favorite players. And rightfully so. I like Koivu a lot. I'm okay with having him ahead of Monahan, but like I said, Monahan could move up this chart rather quickly in the coming years. Number 8. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who was drafted by Phoenix. It was by Phoenix in 2009. The Coyotes, now Arizona, now the Arizona Coyotes, secured their future by keeping Ekman-Larsson and signing him to an extension this summer. He is kind of a forgotten guy in part because he plays for the Coyotes. If he played for the Rangers, the Leafs, Montreal, LA, one of the big markets, he would be a much better known player, and he might actually get more money. It's funny because we talk about players' contracts and how much money they get, but sometimes I think that if you're in one of the big markets, you may get more money because people are more aware of just how good you are. Whereas if you play in Arizona where you don't get as many eyeballs, people may not realize how good you are at your job. Number 7. Ryan Smith, Edmonton, 1994. Smith is a guy I wasn't sold on. And I remember this was in a period for the Oilers where their first-round draft picks were really hit and miss. Boyd Devereaux is one that comes to mind right away. Ryan Smith was kind of in the middle of that. I think Ryan Smith was expected to be a more offensively gifted player than he was, but he had some very solid seasons. He was Captain Canada. His speech upon being traded out of Edmonton, where he bawled his eyes out, is still something that people are well aware of with Smith. But the way he wore his heart on his sleeve and the amount of effort he put in, no matter where he played, and the fact that again, as his career went along, he seemed to get better. To me, that's why he's number 7 on the list. Number 6. John McClane, drafted by the New Jersey Devils, 1983. Now, McClane is not going to be confused for the greatest coach that the New Jersey Devils ever had, but he may be one of the first ever really true New Jersey Devils. Drafted by the Devils, brought up through a system that Lou Lamoriello really cultivated, and McClane was that hard-nosed, hard-working, offensively gifted, yes, but probably traded some of that offense in favor of the two-way game that New Jersey promoted. And, you know, towards the end of his career, he ended up being overpaid because that's kind of what happened in his era. But John McClane, very, very solid forward. Not necessarily as star-grabbing as some of the guys below him, but he was a star in his own way. And he was a winner. And that was part of the change when they went to New Jersey from the Colorado Rockies as well. Colorado Rockies, Kansas City Scouts, not known as winners. New Jersey Devils didn't start out that way. 1983, I believe that was the year that Wayne Gretzky referred to it as a Mickey Mouse organization. That draft pick, part of what turned things around. And then in 84, they drafted this kid named Kirk Muller. And there was a good, hard-working vibe amongst New Jersey Devil players that they drafted. Number 5. Vinnie Foose, who was drafted by Toronto, 1986. I get asked every now and then, when's Vinnie Foose going to get in the Hall of Fame? Why isn't he in the Hall of Fame? I don't know when he'll get in, and I'm not entirely sure why he's not in yet, other than he was never a dominant player. Like, yes, I can rate him ahead of these guys for what he did over his career. He had a solid career. But do I look at Vinnie Foose in any one season he played and say he was a spectacular player? No. Very good player? Absolutely. And an above-average player, and he managed to have a decent career in both Toronto and Montreal. Not many players can say that from the modern era. And, things didn't end well for him, but some players hold on too long, and to me, that's what Dom Foose did. And of course, he had a solid run with San Jose as well. But Dom Foose, to me, it was a guy who held on just a little bit too long. Number 4. Doug Wilson, who was drafted by the Chicago Blackhawks, 1977. He was the winner of a single Norris Trophy. But I remember Doug Wilson as being kind of a dominant defenseman. And he had an excellent career. Now he's had a very long career as GM of the San Jose Sharks. Wilson, a good mind for hockey. He was a smart player on the ice. He's put up a lot of points, but he wasn't a slouch defensively either. And while the Chicago Blackhawks had a lot of lean years when he was there, you can't pin them on him. He was a warrior throughout. Then he ends up going to San Jose as a player, and now he's there helping to run the team. So Wilson was a very solid team guy, and he was a star on top of it. Number 3. Phil Housley, Buffalo Sabres, 1982. Splitting hairs between Wilson and Housley, seriously. Housley, to me, was the better offensive player. I would rate Wilson as a bit better defensively. Housley did play, I believe it was a season and a half, and I want to say it was while he was in Winnipeg, he played at forward. He played both forward and defense. And he had such good hands that it was tempting to make him a forward, much like what Brent Burns does in San Jose. Housley, though, was better suited as a defenseman. Now, of course, he's coach of the Buffalo Sabres. We'll see if this coming season is better than last season. But Housley was one of the best offensive defensemen in the history of the game. Number 2, speaking of best offensive defensemen in the history of the game, Paul Coffey, Edmonton Oilers, 1980, number 6 overall pick. Coffey was the part of a dynasty, almost the part of another one in Pittsburgh, and he won a lot of Stanley Cups. He didn't win a lot of Norris trophies because he wasn't known as a defensive defenseman. May not have known what the name of his goaltender was, may not have seen his goaltender in weeks, but man, his offense was intimidating. Now, towards the end of his career, you'd see him bounce around. Even though his offensive numbers were still decent, that defense fell off so badly when he lost a step that he didn't last very long anywhere. And yet, he was one of those guys who was kind of reclaimed and reborn as a Detroit Red Wing. And that, for me, was when Coffey really won my respect. I had always kind of said, he's a rover, he's not a defenseman. He's not a defenseman. I don't care what they say. That's just, the Oilers had 4 forwards on the ice and Kevin Lowe. When Coffey went to Detroit, he bought in, and I stopped talking about him in that regard because he really had learned and he really had embraced the fact he was a defenseman. Now, number 1, I only had to think about this for a second. Peter Forsberg, Philadelphia, 1991. The 1991 draft, of course, where Eric Lindros went to Quebec and didn't report. Gets traded out. Forsberg goes back to the Nordiques as part of the package, along with a lot of other pieces. But Forsberg, for Lindros, straight up, there was a lot of people at the time said, I don't know if I would give up Forsberg to get Lindros. And this was before Lindros hit all those concussions. Peter Forsberg, a special player throughout his career. Even when he was down to 1 foot, when he had to have skates specially made, just so that he could step onto the ice and move, he was still one of the elite players anytime he stepped on the ice. He was in pain. He was buggered. He couldn't really skate very well. But when he got on the ice, that compete level was always at 100%. And it's one of those careers that it's a shame that it didn't last longer. It is a crying shame that Forsberg's a guy who didn't reach 1,000 points, didn't get to 500 goals because he had hands, he had wheels when he could skate, and when he was healthy, he was arguably the best player in the game. We talk a lot about Jágr taking the mantle from Gretzky. I really believe that if Forsberg had been 100% healthy, I think he could have put up at least the same numbers as Jágr. I think he would have given him a run every year. Maybe not as many goals when Jágr was potting so many goals, but for points, absolutely. Point for point, Forsberg could have been one of the all-time greats. So there you go. 15 through 1 of the number 6 overall draft picks of all time in the NHL. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you're staying cool today as best as you can, considering there's a heat wave pretty much across North America. For the most part, there's certain parts that aren't, and Europe as well. I know if in Europe you guys are getting some massive heat too, so stay cool. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video, and hey, thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.